Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am here with my guest, Kayla, and we're going to be talking about modeling and some of the tips or ways to navigate the modeling world as a new model and even as a semi or experienced model. So, Kayla, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So, for any of my listeners out there who might not know you, I know that a lot of people follow you on Instagram. Links will be in the description. But if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm 20 years old and I've been modeling for about a year and a half or so. I started when I was 18. I had just turned 18. And I was following this pretty big photographer in the area, and I noticed that he was looking for new models. And one of the things that made me feel comfortable about shooting with him was that I had seen other models that he had photographed with. I knew them personally and I knew that they were real people and that they were okay after shooting with him, so I wasn't afraid he was going to like kidnap me or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but from there, it just sort of had this snowball effect. He was pretty big in the area, so once I shot with him, that was enough exposure for other photographers to start reaching out to me and asking to shoot. And from there, I just got more and more requests, and I started shooting with different people, and now here I am.
Awesome. So that one photographing experience sort of was the catalyst that sort of launched you to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. We did about 2 or 3 shoots before we stopped shooting together, but, yeah, they were enough to get me enough exposure that I started meeting with other photographers, and then they gave me exposure, and so forth and so on.
And so you mentioned working with this photographer who was rather large in the area and knowing him and knowing the models that worked with him. Now, after that, when a lot of other photographers started to approach you or message you online or via email or however people were reaching you, how did you then go about, I guess, vetting them as legitimate photographers and not those who would, as you said, potentially kidnap you?
Well, when I first started, I really had no idea. When somebody reaches out to me, if they ask me to shoot, I usually go to their page and I'll look one at their pictures to see if I like them or not. And then two, I check to see how many followers they have because that will be an indicator to their legitimacy or not.
Hmm.
And once those are good, I was actually pretty daring at first, which I wouldn't suggest to other models. Nowadays, I'm always bring my boyfriend with me, at least on the first shoot, so that there's somebody with me to shake their hand and look in their eyes and be like, hey, I'm a person who's just waiting in the car for her. So
Yeah.
it makes me feel more comfortable that they know there's somebody waiting for me and I'm not just alone on a beach or out in a field or at somebody's house.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and I definitely take part in more implied or nude photography, and I don't do any nude photography on the first shoot with somebody. I always wait till the second or third shoot so I feel more comfortable with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would suggest, especially if you're a starting out model, even if you don't have a boyfriend who's going to come with you, if you have a sibling, a friend, or somebody that you trust that's going to come, and they don't have to, hover the whole time over the photographer's shoulder. They can simply meet them, make eye contact, shake hands, and then wait in the car for you. Because I know a lot of photographers get annoyed when there's other people at the shoot besides them and the model because
Hmm.
if you have your friends with you they can be distracting, or if your boyfriend's there you might feel like embarrassed to do some of the more sexy stuff. But if you have a person who's going to be you know nice and easy to work with and everything that you can take with you, it definitely adds this third party of, hey, don't do anything creepy.
Yeah, definitely. And I had spoken with another photographer who does do intimate or boudoir type portraiture, and as a male, he always leaves that sort of door open to his models, and sometimes even suggests having them bring somebody because it always makes however you can make the model more comfortable. Typically, the shoot tends to go a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. If a photographer is really being weird about you bringing somebody, then, that's a sign you don't want to shoot with them. If at first they're like, well, I don't really like having somebody there, it can be distracting, and
Yeah.
then you say, well, it makes me feel more comfortable, it's more of a safety measure, then if they're a legit photographer, that should be enough for them to go, oh, no problem, bring them along, it'll totally be fine. But if they really are getting weird about it and insisting you come alone, I would rethink shooting with them.
Yeah, definitely. And mentioning that you started out at 18, and finding your own photographer right away, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of younger girls who may be 18 or turning 18 and they're being approached by people online. So this is definitely very, very good information to be getting out there to the community.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that you might want to figure out before you start shooting with a bunch of different photographers is, why are you shooting? What is the purpose of this? Are you
Yeah.
just trying to get attention? And if that's the case, then, if it's just likes and followers you're after, then maybe you should rethink the limits that you're willing to go to in order to get attention. But if you're in it to create art and beautiful pictures, then you want to think about that kind of image that you want to put out. Are you going to only do bedroom shoots and lingerie that suggest a sexy, sexualized situation? Or are you going to take, beautiful photos out in nature where you might happen to be naked and they're more of an art form rather
Yeah.
than a sexualized picture insinuating that you're about to be doing something of a sexual act?
Yeah, definitely. And I like that you mentioned that models starting out should definitely take the time to decide how far they are willing to go. I know that as a photographer myself, I've never dabbled in boudoir or intimate portraiture. It's sort of not my gamut. Mine is
Hmm.
more couples, weddings, things of that nature. Um, but I do respect the art and I respect the photographers and the models who create that art.
Oh, for sure.
And so when you mention models or even individuals before stepping into the realm of modeling, deciding how far they are willing to go, in today's day and age, how do you feel? Do you think that a lot of young girls might feel that they need to sexualize themselves in order to gain a following, or should they just not be attempting this whole modeling sort of field? I guess.
Well, I think that it is definitely possible to be beautiful and sexy and also be classy and artsy.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a line between, you know, more of just look at my booty pornography kind of stuff
Yeah.
and look at the beautiful female form and how soft her skin is and those curves and the way her hair flows and things like that?
Hmm.
And another thing is, I definitely felt as a young model that I was the inexperienced one, and these photographers knew what they were talking about, and that they had all the power, and that, maybe I should just do what they say. But if you have a certain image that you want to put forward or limits on your boundaries and all that stuff, you have the right, even if it's your first shoot, to enforce those boundaries and to say no and to say, I'm not comfortable with that, or maybe we shouldn't shoot together. It's always important to put good work out that you're proud of, because it's going to be there in 5 months, 5 years, 10 years, and
Yeah.
who knows what jobs you'll have down the line. Or, if you're getting married, somebody's family might see that. It's just, what kind of image do you want of yourself to be on the internet forever, basically?
Definitely having these photos out there for the world, family potentially being able to see them, knowing your limits, knowing how far you want to go as a model. Have have you ever had any experiences while working with these other photographers that might have put you in a questionable position or felt uncomfortable where you needed to sort of assert your ground or stand your ground? I mean, you don't need to name any names or anything like that, but
Yeah,
uh,
for sure. Well, I personally have been very lucky, and I definitely sort of was starstruck by all this stuff. I was just a regular 18-year-old girl, and then all of a sudden I have all these people messaging me and telling I'm beautiful and all this
mhm,
stuff, and I was like, "Wow, cool. I'm down for anything." But my boyfriend was there to kind of be like, "Hold on. Are you just going to take your clothes off for every guy that has a camera,
yeah,
or that kind of a thing?" So I personally have been lucky enough to have really great experiences with photography all around. but I do know other models that have been in situations where they're shooting for an actual company that actually reached out to them, and they go to a room to do a shoot or whatever, and then the dude will start physically making them uncomfortable, sometimes even touch them, or like, actually push them down and try to physically overtake them. And they're
Oh,
forced to get up and be like, whoa, no, stop. This is not cool.
yeah.
And I've definitely heard of some horror stories from other models of photographers saying inappropriate things, photographers offering to pay them money just for intimacy and things like that. And those are the situations where if the my friend had had another person in the room while she was doing this shoot with them, they may not have leaned forward and physically done something to make her uncomfortable. So those are the kind of situations where maybe on the first shoot you don't do nudity with them, and
Yeah.
then you're able to catch their vibe and be like, because the girl who was physically touched and made to feel like she was, needed to be careful of being raped or things like that.
Yeah.
The guy said some weird things leading up to that, and she was getting weird feelings, but then she just sort of shrugged it off, and then he, leaned in and did some really inappropriate things, and she was, got up and was all scared and freaked out.
Yeah, definitely inappropriate. I mean, when when I was looking into photography and working with models and sort of building my portfolio, I mean, you mentioned your boyfriend sort of being that anchor that grounded you
Hmm.
and not taking your clothes off for say anybody with a camera.
Yeah, for
My
sure.
girlfriend at the time, who's now wife, she was my anchor and still is my anchor, and gave me pointers from a female perspective. Don't put your hands on people, like so. For me, I'll try to act out the pose, and if I can't do it or they're not quite getting it, then it's like, well, we'll just skip it. We'll just skip it because I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
You can't really. You have to respect that barrier with people in their
Yeah.
private space.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a very trusting thing, My friend who I was talking about in particular, she specializes in nudity and more of sexy sort of poses and things like that. And
Hmm.
she's really down for anything. And but she's not down to be physically taken over or things like that. Just because she's willing to get naked and act sexy in a bedroom doesn't give the photographer permission to get turned on and want to start doing things with her?
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads me to um, sort of that Me Too movement and the Time's Up. I'm sure you've heard of it, and Hollywood
Mhm.
speaking out on that, and a lot of very influential women in the arts who are shining a light on a subject that when I heard about it, it was like, well, it seems as if this has always been going on, and it's really great that a light is being shown on this.
Mhm.
How do you feel that that has affected the industry, even on someone of our level? Like for me, more of an amateur photographer, part time professional, and for you as a model, still building her portfolio and beginning to venture and work with more and more talented artists.
Well, for one thing, I think it's a long, long time coming that people actually take this thing seriously. But yeah, for some reason, socially our climate has changed and people are listening to women a lot more, which I think is really important.
Yeah,
Saying I'm going to tell your superiors, or, telling the police or something is a lot more threatening now that people are taking it seriously.
yeah,
People, men in power, if, say a photographer who has really gained stature and status and things like that, if he were to try and take advantage of a newly 18-year-old model, who's going to take her word over his? But now with this new situation, it's not so strange for the girl to be taken seriously. And so I feel like it's definitely, especially as this whole movement gets more and more power, it's going to be harder for photographers to take advantage because they have that real threat of getting arrested or anything like that.
yeah. And when you mention working with, because um, I noticed that when this Me Too movement and the time is up, that a lot of women were promoting that other women should pursue these positions that these powerful individuals hold. Do you see, or have you worked with a lot of female photographers, or do you see more women becoming interested in photography because of this?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of older women, but I've definitely seen more younger women who are starting out. Like one of my favorite photographers who's also one of my best friends, her name's Ashley.
Hmm.
She's very very good and I love shooting with her. And she definitely, is able to do the whole implied nude portraits more easily because she is a girl and she's easier to work with than a guy because you don't have to worry about her suddenly jumping on you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to see more women photographers out there. Women are creative and they're awesome, and I would really like to see that. But it is true that the majority of photographers I work with are men.
Okay. Yeah, and you mentioned Ashley, and I've seen her work, and I've been a long time follower. Her followers have just gone through the roof, very much like your own as of late, and it's just awesome to see two very talented individuals sort of building that audience and sort of uh, as we're doing now, speaking to a younger audience who might want to be coming into this type of thing and sort of sharing that knowledge that you've learned.
Yeah, for sure. I really love how she captures women's beauty instead of just putting booties all over her page, It's
Yeah.
mainly implied art and things like that, but it definitely has a class to it that I really enjoy. And I think that it's important women take back their body. The naked woman's body is automatically a sexual object to most who view it,
Hmm.
but you can be beautiful and sexy without being sexualized, if you get what I mean. And I
Yeah.
think that it's important that women take back their bodies and, post naked pictures on the internet and be proud of it and all those things because why should we be ashamed of it? I am definitely a big supporter of free the nipple and all that, but I am
Yeah.
also a big supporter of class and projecting yourself in a virtuous way.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of photos that I think Ashley has definitely captured, and other photographers who I'm not sure all of them that you have worked with, but in looking through your Instagram, there's a lot of photographers who sort of capture that look that reminds me of, um, I don't know if you've been to like the Getty or any type of those museums where
Oh,
there's,
yeah.
yeah. So when I see artistic paintings and sculptures, it's interesting to see a lot of photographers who also have that eye and their images and some of the images that you've captured and that Ashley has captured sort of hit that nail on the head and sort of are, it's almost like they're a nod to some of those older Renaissance style or even earlier style of nude portraits that were painted by some of the greats.
Oh, yeah. When people give girls crap for posting beautiful art of their naked body, it's definitely a good one to source all those old pictures. But I definitely think that the naked body is a timeless thing, and as soon as you add clothes into it, it's you can tell what time period it is. There's
Yeah.
social cues to it and everything like that. And so sometimes it's really nice to have a simple beautiful picture of the human body in its natural form in nature wherever you're going to be. It's definitely a different experience than viewing a clothed person.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked about photographing, say, indoors and how that can be viewed as a different type of sexual photo. And then you touched on outdoors. And I'm curious about the outdoors. How do you find those types of locations that are not only safe and out of the way to allow the photographer and you as the model to be creative, but well, yeah, I guess that's just my question. How do you go about finding those types of locations?
Well, I mean, because of where I live, there's definitely a lot of like hiking areas and parks and things like that with like hidden little back corners that you can go to. But
Yeah.
it's all about timing too. I remember I did a shoot with my friend Ashley where we kept having to run behind trees because bikers would pass by or things like that. But yeah, I mean, if you travel enough into dense forests or anything like that, it's usually pretty easy. The good thing about nature is that it's quiet, and so you can hear people coming from a pretty far distance.
Yeah.
Or if you're doing like a nude shoot, you could bring a jacket with you or like a coat so that while you're, changing camera lenses or something, you can just slip that on real quick.
Yeah.
Or, depending on how ballsy the model is, sometimes you don't really care. I mean, some people might get offended and, call the police on you for public nudity or something. But most people mind their own business and are like, "Oh my goodness, oh, something's going on over there." Or
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, cool, it's a photography thing," and then they like watch awkwardly from a distance. But
Yeah.
I personally would cover myself up if somebody was walking by, but I know models who don't even care and they just run around like all naked, just free the world.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to each their own. But
Yeah.
so in getting involved for any young models out there, because it seems like you definitely have a lot of experience in working with artistic portraiture and nudity and things like that. I think it'd be very important to sort of touch on some of the ways with which a newer model can navigate that sort of arena or genre. How would you go about? Because you already mentioned working with a photographer at least once. That's your sort of rule right there. But
Mhm.
how does the conversation go? How should a photographer speak to a model, especially about doing a nude shoot, even before meeting?
Okay. Well, so if a photographer were to message you, I would expect them to say something along the lines of, "Hey, I've been following your work for a while. I think it really looks great. I love to collaborate with you." And then, if you decide to collaborate with them, you'd say, "Yeah, sure." And then they would say, like send you some inspiration photos for the photo shoot. And if those are nude or anything like that, they might add on a little message of, "I like to do implied nude. If that's not your thing, then whatever. Maybe we can try it another time. But if it is, you can always bring someone with you, or, we can just go slow at first, or things like that." But the more honest and candid a photographer is, then the better. And if you reply back with your boundaries, like, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to do implied, but I don't want to show any frontal breasts, or I
Yeah,
don't want, any pubic hair in there, or, you can show my butt and stuff like that, but I wouldn't like, the front to be showing, or, stuff like that." But
yeah,
I would definitely expect them to send inspirational photos so you can expect what kind of pictures you'd be taking, what kind of setting you'll be in. They'll tell you if you need to bring any clothes with you, if you need to do your makeup beforehand, or if they want your hair to be a specific way.
hmm
It's really a collaboration, so you really should talk out all of the points beforehand, have a time and a place where you're going to meet. Um, yeah, so you know what to expect, and that's basically it.
yeah. And then on the day of the shoot, definitely no hands. A
Yeah.
photographer, male or female,
Or
really should probably keep their hands to themselves.
Or if they want to, I've had people say, "Oh, may I touch you? I want to adjust a piece of your hair," or "May I adjust that piece of your dress?" Like if the person's in a pose and you don't want them to move,
Yeah,
it would be appropriate to ask permission to move the dress or something like that. But definitely no sudden movements that would make the model feel unsafe.
yeah, definitely. And it should always be okay to have somebody there with you, whether it's family, friend, boyfriend, significant other,
Mhm.
partner, anybody. And if a photographer does not allow that for creative purposes, might be a red flag if they're
Yeah, for
not.
sure.
Yeah, might be a red flag right there.
They might just be a snooty pants too, but it would be more of a red flag for me.
Yeah. And so what other sort of tips do you have out there for young individuals looking to get into maybe just modeling in general, not necessarily the style that you do?
Well, in any situation with any pictures, it's good to have confidence. Sit up straight, have your neck straight, have a real genuine smile, let it reach your eyes, have fun. Photo shoots are a social thing. You and the photographer can talk about how you got into it, what you like to do for hobbies. It should be a nice, comfortable environment. You shouldn't be sitting there going, "Oh my God, do I look weird? Oh my gosh, I don't know if my face looks good like this."
Yeah.
And you should also have a photographer that's able to give you pointers. My friend Ashley is really good at letting me know if I have any side rolls going on, or if, my hair is out of place, or if I need to, not tilt my chin in that direction. Like one of my eyes tend to close a lot more than my other one when I smile.
hmm
So she'll tell me and we'll switch the camera around a bit. But yeah, communication and just being comfortable and feeling natural and actually having fun at the shoot, if you're pretending to have fun, it will come across as a pretend smile. If you're, uncomfortable or stiff, it will come off as uncomfortable or stiff. So being confident, acting natural, just being your true beautiful self is one of the best way to get really nice photographs.
Awesome. Well, I definitely agree with that. I've worked with many models, and I always try to have them be as comfortable as possible. And typically, if it's the first time working together, I know that in the beginning, there's sort of always those awkward moments. And I try to start out my shoots when I'm photographing couples with what I call the prom pose. It's like just stand together, however's comfortable for you guys, and I'll take a couple pictures just to get a model comfortable in front of the camera, or if the boyfriend or the future husband is not really one for taking photos. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing, so you can get comfortable, and then by the end of the shoot, everybody's usually good to go and professional models by that point.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I think about sometimes is not letting my poses go for too long. I try to only have one pose for maybe 3 or 4 shots.
Hmm.
So I basically am moving the entire time, just very slowly. I
Yeah.
try not to let any of my poses seem stiff or posed. So it's captured right when I'm in the middle of moving into something else. And I try to keep my face natural. I'll move it from a smile to maybe a closed mouth smile to maybe a sad face to a confident face to a mad face, back to a smile, back to a big smile, small smile, different things like that. I tilt my chin in different directions to get different angles of my jaw.
Hmm.
I'll move my arms up, down. I'll sit, I'll stand up, I'll move my legs apart. I'll even twirl around, flip my hair, different things like that. Because photographers are very good at taking pictures, but in my experience, they're not very good at coming up with poses most of the time. There's
No.
only about 2 or 3 photographers who have specific sit here, cross your legs like this, and tilt your chin kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But it can be very frustrating for both involved in the photography process if you get just 100 of the same pose, or 100 of the same outfit. Switching it up can definitely add a lot to a shoot.
Yeah, definitely. I could totally agree with that, because when doing engagement sessions, or even weddings, I tend to have the couples. I try to capture them in motion, and so the fact that you're always sort of moving, especially when people look through your photos, even though it's a still image, it's as if they you can see the motion in it. So it's definitely comes across in that kind of photo. I would say anybody can compare a photo in motion to one that's not in motion, because when you hold like your yearbook photo next to a photo you've taken while moving, one obviously looks like you're moving, and the other you're just sitting stagnant.
Yeah, for sure. I believe everybody's the most beautiful when they're at their most candid. And even though a planned photo shoot obviously is not a real candid,
Hmm.
it shouldn't be, you shouldn't be thinking about the lens. You shouldn't be thinking about your pose. You should just be living in the moment. And after all, that's what photography really is about. It's capturing a moment so you can review it over and over and over again. And nobody likes a fake moment. People love real things that happen in their life.
Definitely. And so, sort of in closing, and to kind of sum up all of our conversation here, when looking at photographers and when going through their Instagrams and checking if they're reputable, and the conversation process and all of those things, how important would you consider, because you did mention having a lot of followers, how important are followers, say, to photographers who have maybe websites or other means of I guess old school professional contact information?
Well, probably not that important because what you really are trying to get when you're viewing the photographer's page is it going to be a worthwhile experience or are you going to waste 2 hours of your day?
Yeah.
So the followers on Instagram is just sort of like a staple easy way to sort of see if it's worth it or not because the kind of exposure you get from those shoots definitely helps add to the page. But when it comes down to it, I don't think photography is about the likes. I think it's about good pictures. And so, even if they have a small amount of followers, if they have good pictures and you want to work with them, then you should do it. I would suggest looking on other outlets that they have. You know, if they don't have that much on their Instagram, they might have a website, and would be worth it to check that out as well. But I wouldn't just go off of the amount of followers someone has to
Yeah.
be a deciding factor whether I shoot with them or not.
And
As
then,
someone who wants to gain more followers, it's
yeah.
helpful to get their exposure, but it's not the most important thing I think about.
Yeah. And then one more thing, when it comes to, you mentioned looking through a photographer's Instagram, and when the first photographer you worked with, you knew the models. What are your thoughts on reaching out to models that a photographer you don't know, or you haven't worked with? What are your thoughts on reaching out to models that they've worked to sort of
I
get
think
their,
that would definitely be something. I haven't actually tried that. That's a good idea. I should do that. But yeah, I would, if you're, as long as you're open and just really straight up like, "Hey, I love your page. I'm thinking about shooting with this one guy. Just wanted to know what was your experience." It'd be helpful to let me decide if I want to work with them or not. I think that any reasonable person would be more than willing to answer that question, and it would be a really good way of getting firsthand advice on whether that person is going to be a creep or not worth the time.
yeah, because unfortunately there is no Yelp or review page for individual photographers yet. I'm pretty sure that
Yeah,
that'll be
definitely.
coming, but until then, you've offered a lot of really great information. I hope that any young listeners out there who are interested in modeling have been able to take a few of these tidbits or all of it, and are able to implement it in their own modeling careers.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad I could help.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kayla, for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.